You can't hear me. It says the sound is coming through. I wonder. Hold on. Uh, this is complicated. That's interesting and quite frustrating. Okay, good. So Adam makes this blasphemous claim from John 10 that we are Elohim, right? Because that's what he's quoting from 7 uh, Psalm 88, which is what he goes to in the video. I believe it's 88. Maybe not. Which psalm is that? Psalm 82. So number one, Psalms are not Torah. It's a poem. It's poetic. It's not prophetic. It's poetic. But let's look at this. God presides in the divine assembly. Like I said, this is a translation. And this is what the New Testament authors were relying on too, the Greek translation of the word Elohim to theos, God. But this isn't what the Hebrew is getting across. How do I show this, Father? There's a JPS translation here. There we go. So let me look at this. God standeth in the congregation of God. Even they don't get it right. And, this word Elohim, it can mean God, but it can also mean a human being, the chief, the judge. And this is what we're talking about here. Look at how long will ye judge unjustly? Do angels judge? Not according to Torah. And respect the persons of the wicked. Judge the poor and the fatherless. Should be clear what's being talked about here, right? Judge the poor and the fatherless. What does this have to do with angelic beings, a host of angels? It doesn't. Do justice to the afflicted and destitute. Rescue the poor and the needy. Deliver them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither do they understand. They go about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are moved. I said, ye are godlike beings. And even the Talmudic Jews, they believe this. This is what I've said before. It's so interesting how often a Christian will attack their root. Talmudism is the root that led to Roman Catholicism, that led to what Adam believes. Yet he's chopping at the root. Roman Catholicism is wrong. Judaism is wrong. They corrupted my Bible. Like, no. And all of you are the sons of the Most High. Nevertheless, ye shall die like men. Why will they die like men? Because they are men. They are men. They're judges. They're the Elohim of the people. See, remember what? Um, oh, that's awesome. So in Exodus 7:1, Yahweh says to what? And Yahweh answers Moses, see, I have made you like an Elohim to Pharaoh. Does this mean that Moses is Elohim? I mean, you guys, you take these completely illogical jumps. He's saying he is above Pharaoh, not that he's in the heavens as El Most High. You are to speak all that I command you and your brother Aaron to tell the Pharaoh as your prophet that the Israelites will go out of the land. Indeed. is Moses literally a god? Because, Yahweh says he's an Elohim? No. You, you read texts too spiritually. If he called them Elohim until the word of Elohim came. No, he didn't. This is not what the text is saying. He's not saying they're in the Most High's space. He's saying, even though you are above other men as their Elohim, as a judge, you will die like men. And, the book of John completely perverts this to say they will be in the heavens, like the Most High. And then we get a quote from Jasher, because Jasher is mentioned in Joshua, it doesn't mean the version of Jasher we have is authentic. That's actually number two. Number one, it's not Torah. The Torah is the standard, not Jasher. And then we go to Genesis 11 because, he finds this Aramaic translation that has the word of Yahweh and the 70 angels. Come, let us go down and confuse their language. The 70 angels are not in there. They were added later. Because this is a later translation. I wonder if it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let's take a look. Genesis chapter 11. Oh, Genesis 11 is not a Dead Sea Scroll, so we can't verify it there. But I pretty much guarantee if it was there, it wouldn't have 70 angels or the word of Yahweh. So then we go to Deuteronomy 32:18. Again, not from the correct version, but from the Greek translation. That was weird. So this is the song that Moses sang to the people. And again, we see these problems. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided the sons of man, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the numbers of the sons of God. The sons of God are whom? Exodus 4:22. Israel. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And the reason he went with the Septuagint is to translate this as the angels. This isn't talking about angels, guys. And I had a post about this on Facebook, this whole idea that there are angelic beings. Sorry, Gabriel. What was Gabriel? Let's go to the Blue Letter Bible. It might be easier. So Gabriel is in the book of Daniel and Luke, and you can see the evolution of this idea. See, but look at Daniel 8:16. What does it said? And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, and he said, Gabriel, make this man to understand this vision. So this man is Daniel. This man is Gabriel. And you don't believe me? Look at the next mention of him, Daniel 9:21. Yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom had I seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. So number one, he was in this vision of Daniel's. He wasn't actually present. He was in a vision. Number two, Daniel tells you this is a man, not an angelic being. Okay, so what about Michael? This is the other one that Daniel mentions that's in the New Testament. You can see it's also a common name. So we have it mentioned in Daniel and Jude in the Revelation. So Daniel is a chief prince. And this is, do you really think an angelic being is going to have trouble conquering evil spirits? This is so ridiculous, and I can't believe I ever fell for this. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of my people. And there should be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation even to that same time. And at that time my people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. Absolutely. Torah is supernatural. Thanks for that testimony, Charles. Give ear, O heavens, and I will speak. Hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. Let my teaching fall like rain, and my speech settle like dew, like gentle rain on new grass, like shower on tender plants. For I will proclaim the name of Yahweh. The name of who? And this is one of their problems. It doesn't say the name of Yeshua. Sorry. For I will proclaim the name of Yahweh, ascribe greatness to our God. He is the rock. Have you forgotten the master that saved you? If you turned from Yahweh, you have. Then we go to the book of Enoch. It's not worth my time. Book of Enoch. Psalm 82. Daniel 10, which I just discussed. The prince of Persia was a man, not an angel. Acts 23, which is the New Testament. Shall I discuss that, Father? Why not? So verse 8 is what, and it's interesting how often Father does this. You need to praise him, because you know what this verse is? It was when Paul lied. For the Sadducees say there is no resurrection, neither angel nor spirit, but the Pharisees confess both. This idea of angels is from Hellenism. It's not in the Tanakh. And this is how you know a writing came well after the Babylonian exile and when the Greek Empire started to synergize with the world. So let's go back a few chapters. Change this to a different translation that's easier to read. So previous chapter, Acts 21, when we get to Paul, good old Paul, and you have been told about you that you were teaching all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children nor to walk according to the customs. And this is why, people will come to believe that Paul didn't teach against Torah, even though he's being accused of teaching against Torah. And if you read Galatians, he is teaching against Torah. He tells you if you become circumcised, you will fall short of Christ. What then is to be done? They will certainly hear you that you have come. Therefore do this, and we will tell you. We have 4 men who are under a vow. Take them and purify yourselves among them. What is he talking about? Going to the temple and making a sin offering. Pay their expenses that you may shave their heads to put them under the Nazarite vow. Then all will know that there is nothing to the things which have been told about you. So basically, this person is helping cover up the sins of Paul. It's plain and simple. Like, make it appear as you, if you follow the law. You say, well, he is. Well, right. There he is giving the appearance of that. But look what he says in 1 Corinthians 9. Verse 20, and to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. To them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them under the law. To them without law, I was without law. I mean, is this how Elijah dealt with Naaman when he came to be healed? I better be without the law, like a pagan, so I can convince him that God is true. This is such a ridiculous statement by Paul, that we appear without law to those that are without law so they can be one. Come on, guys. Just use your brain. Sorry. God forgive me. But concerning the Gentiles who believed, we wrote, having decided that they should keep from meat sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what is strangled, and from sexual immorality. This goes back to Acts 15, and this is the Noahide covenant. The Noahide covenant that guys like Adam say that the Talmudists are going to put you under. You've already been put under it. You've already been put under it. This goes back to the Roman Empire. So then Paul took them in the next day, purifying himself among them, went into the temple, giving notice of the completion of the days of purification until the sacrifice was offered for each of them. Another verse that just it just destroys Christianity. I mean, how could you say that he died for my sin once and for all? Hello, guys. Look at the book of Hebrews. What does it say? There is no more sacrifice for sin. Yeah, here's Paul making a sacrifice and an offering for his sin. Does that mean that the fiery judgment awaits Paul for going and making another sacrifice for sin? You guys, you read the New Testament like this. Oh, okay, I can look. Okay, I can look. Stop cherry picking. Now, when the 7 days were almost over, the Jews from Asia, upon noticing him in the temple, began to throw all the crowd into confusion and laid hands on him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who teaches to everyone everywhere against our people in the law." It already showed he does. Into this place, and besides, he's even brought Greeks into the temple and has defiled this holy place. This is why he was arrested. They assumed that he had an uncircumcised man with him in the Holy of Holies, for they had previously seen Trophimus the Ephesian in the city with him, and they supposed that Paul had brought him into the temple. But there's something important here. He was arrested for defiling the temple. And look at Acts 23 again. Acts 23, he says what? Verse 8. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection. Why would he say this? We'll go back to verse 6. But knowing that one group were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, Paul began crying out in the Sanhedrin, "Brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of the Pharisees. I am on trial for the hope of the resurrection of the dead." This is a lie. Paul was not arrested for preaching resurrection. Why did he say it? It tells you. It literally tells you right there. He was arrested because he saw that it would cause division. That is the only reason he said this. He did not say it because it was true. He said it because it would cause a distraction. It would cause dissension. As he said this, there was dissension between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor an angel or a spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all because they were Hellenistic. The Sadducees were not right either. I do believe that Father will resurrect. He promises life, not just for this life. And let's go back even further to the creation account. Elohim said he make man in our image. Yeah, this is a favorite proof text as well, right? And, as much as I don't like Tovia, he points out, read the context. Read the context. Read the next verse. What does it say? Let's read them both. And then Elohim said, "Let us make man in our image." And you notice how they capitalize this? There's no capital letters in Hebrew, right? "According to our likeness, that they will have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the sky, over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." And verse 27, "And God created man in his own image." His own image, singular. Now, why is verse 26 plural? Honestly, I believe this is a mistranslation that goes back to the Greek Septuagint, and there are many of them. I don't believe it is meant to be plural in the original source text, but it's a presupposition you have because of the Greek text, because of the New Testament. Remember the widget? I told you the widget's made on the moon, and you have to believe me, or else you will be eternally tortured. Same thing. You believe the widget. And then he goes to John 1. But, if John 1 were true, why is it not here? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And he had this whole idea he just was talking about, this Jewish idea that Yahweh is one. Well, yeah, because this is what it repeatedly tells us. Therefore, Yahweh, your Redeemer, and the one who formed you from the womb, I am Yahweh, I am the maker of all things, stretching out the heavens by myself, spreading out the earth all alone. If John 1 to 3 were true, wouldn't we see it in Isaiah? And you says, well, we do in the Aramaic. The Aramaic translation is a translation, and it clearly came after the first century. I hate to tell you that. I talked about this yesterday, but didn't really dig into it. Nothing comes out of thin air. And this is something people have studied, but you don't study to find yourself approved. Comparing Philo's and Gospel of John's logos. It's only in the Gospel of John. This idea is only in the Gospel of John, which is a 2nd century writing. And I can prove that. I know there are many scholars who disagree with that. But Philo is the one that came up with this idea of a logos being with God. He was a Hellenistic Jew. Logos is a constitutive element of the Creator God's identity. This is from Philo. John similarly presents the Logos as being integral to the divine identity, whereas Philos establishes a temporal distinction between God and the Logos. John makes no such differentiations between the two. Instead, John presents the Logos as being divine and co-eternal with Israel's supreme God. The difference. I mean, this is so clear. But I want to go to something else, that just a verse that Father showed me just absolutely destroys the authenticity of this gospel. John 8:40, but now you are seeking to kill me, a man. The word of God in the flesh was clearly redacted later on by the Roman Catholic Church, because whoever wrote it originally is telling you he is a man who has told you the truth which he heard from God. Now, this is really interesting. This is what makes the entire book blasphemy. This Abraham did not do. Really let that sink in. Abraham did not tell you the truth from God. That's what he just said. As we go to Psalm 45, thy throne, Elohim, is forever and ever. The scepter of thy kingdom is right scepter. You love righteousness and hate wickedness. Therefore, Elohim, your Elohim, has anointed you with the oil of gladness, and your blood prevails. So let's look at the context. Look at the context. Psalm 45. My heart overflows with a good theme. I address my verses to the king, and my tongue is the pen of the skillful scribe. You are the fairer than the sons of men. Grace is poured upon your lips. Therefore, God has blessed you forever. Gird your sword on your thigh, O mighty one, in your splendor and your majesty. In your majesty, ride on victoriously for the cause of truth and meekness and righteousness, and let your right hand teach you awesome things. Your arrows are sharp, the people fall under you, your arrows in the heart of the king's enemies. Your throne, O God, Elohim, is forever and ever, and the scepter of uprightness, and the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of joy above your companions. Do I really have to spell this out, guys? This is the same subject matter. It's not two different Elohim. This is what I mean. Look, this widget's made from Mars. Oh, when I say two Elohim, it's literally two Elohim. No, it's the same Elohim. It's a poem. It's written poetically, like a song. It's sonnet. Oh God, it's not saying that, Elohim, Elohim. No, it's my Elohim, my Elohim. Oh, please open their eyes, Father. And then, of course, we go to Psalm 2. Psalm 2, and we'll read this in the only correct English translation of Blue Letter Bible. Why do the nations rebel? Why are the countries devising plots that will fail? The kings of the earth from a united front. The rulers collaborate against Yahweh and against his anointed king. Did the rulers of the earth collaborate against him? No, it was just the Roman Empire. And they didn't even collaborate. They just took him out because he was a zealot, which I've talked about in prior studies. They say, let's tear off the shackles they put on us. Let's free ourselves from their ropes. The one enthroned in the heaven laughs in disgust. The Lord taunts them. Then he angrily speaks to them and terrifies them in his rage, saying, I myself installed my king on Zion, my holy hill. You notice, like, even it says that, and, he just ignores it. This is what I talk about. Like, I'm going to ignore that passage. Okay, cool, I can read. And look at what he highlighted. Against his anointed, there, and you are my son. Who is the son again of Yahweh? Who is the son that was put on the holy hill? Exodus 4:22. Then he will tell Pharaoh that this is what Yahweh says: Israel is my firstborn son. Hosea 11. When I was Israel, a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. Like, so it's okay we can suddenly change who the son is in the Psalms? Is it really? No. The king announces, I will announce Yahweh's decree. You said to you are my son, Israel, and this very day I have become your father. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations as your inheritance. And this is one of the interesting things. Remember I said, the cherry picking. This is one of those things they just go like this. Oh, I can't see. Yeah. And you're probably wondering, this guy is out of his mind. I promise I'm not. At least I don't think so. Matthew 4. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit in the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, this is part of the replacement theology, making Jesus Israel. He was hungry, and the tempter came to him, if you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. And this is what Moses promised the people in the wilderness, that he would make bread from nothing, manna. If he was the anointed, Father would give him what he desires, what he needs to live. And we'll get to that. But then he says, it is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God. This is about, having Torah and physical food. You need both. He's not Torah. Then the devil took him to the holy city, set him on the pinnacle of the temple. If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift up your hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Again, Psalm 91 promises this for the anointed one, that Yahweh will protect him. He will not allow him to see death. But what does he say? It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test. Which is the same thing Ahaz says when Yahweh asks him, ask for a sign. And we'll get there. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world, their glory. All this I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. All this I will give you. Where did you read that? I will give you the nations as your inheritance, the ends of the earth as your personal property. The Gospels just had the devil saying what Yahweh says in Psalm 2:8. And if you don't think that's important, you're not paying attention. Let's read it again. Psalm 2:8. Ask me, Yahweh, and I will give you the nations as your inheritance, the ends of the earth as your personal property. Matthew 4:9. All this I will give you, he said, if you fall down and worship me. All the kingdoms of the world. They aren't his, they belong to Yahweh. So why is the Gospel of Matthew saying they belong to the devil? Because the Gospels were written with a Marcionite influence, that Yahweh is the devil. Let's keep reading Psalm 2, because I'm sure he'll get to this. You will break them with an iron scepter. You will smash them like a potter's jar. So now, you kings, do what is wise. You rulers of the earth, submit to his correction. Whose correction? Yahweh, not the Son. Serve Yahweh in fear, repent in terror. Give sincere homage. And yes, this is a more correct translation. I went over that with the prior video. Bar in Hebrew does not mean son. Otherwise, he will be angry, and you will die because of your behavior. When his anger quickly ignites, how blessed are all those who take shelter in him. So all of these, him, his anger, and his wrath, all of this is about Yahweh, not about the Son. And this is the great lie. If you tell a little lie, you can make it cover a big sin. But you have to keep lying. This is what we see in the New Testament in Christianity. Yahweh said unto my master, sit thou at my right hand. Yeah, so guess what that means? This master is not Yahweh. And this is the claim Adam keeps trying to make. And this is also impossible to be about him, because he was never installed as king on Zion. Didn't happen. And again, he is about Yahweh. While then he goes to Matthew 22, showing him quoting that. Oh yes, Proverbs 34. We have to go to that. Proverbs 30, verse 4. Who has ascended into heaven and then descended? Who has gathered up the winds in his fists? Who has bound up the waters in his cloak? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? It's Yahweh. And what is his son's name? Exodus 4:22, Israel. This is made in Mars. You have to believe that. You have to. So then I show you another widget. And you look at it and you go, oh, that must be made in Mars too. Right? This is how you read the Bible, because you have these pretexts they've dumped in your brain. And this is what Adam is doing. This is what Paul does. And so Enoch is proved true because Jude quotes it. So a book that's not inspired by Yahweh, that misquotes the actual Tanakh because it quotes Enoch. Enoch is valid? No. And sorry. And I'll show you what I mean. Verse 9, but even when Michael the archangel, and remember, Michael's not an archangel, he's a man, a prince, was arguing with the devil. This never happened. This is something I've talked about with other passages. Matthew 2:23. And he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So what was fulfilled, was spoken through the prophets, he will be called a Nazarene. There's no prophet that says this. In the same way, there is absolutely no text that says this. None. The devil wasn't debating with Michael about Moses' body. This is a New Testament invention. And for what purpose, I don't know. It's weird. And, if it's using the same argument, though, they love to make these argumentations so they can find more fences to stay an idolater. Look at the book of Titus. A certain one of them, in fact, one of their own prophets, said, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, and lazy gluttons. Should we therefore read the words of this Greek prophet because Paul quotes it and the Roman church canonized those words? And you really think about the ridiculousness of this statement. The prophet, the philosopher who said this, he was a Cretan. Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, and lazy gluttons. And he says this is a true statement. So a man who says that all Cretans are liars is telling the truth, but he's a liar. You see, this is the sort of philosophical mind games that these men played. And this is the same thing, that we see Paul playing in Romans 3. Absolutely not. Let God be proven true and every human being shown up a liar. Excuse me, Paul. Did you just say that every human being is a liar? Does this include you? If you're a liar, how do we know when you're telling the truth? Well, look at verse 7. For if it be by my lie the truth of God enhances his glory, does his lie enhance God's glory? I mean, he's literally telling you, every man is a liar, and I lied to glorify God. Why am I judged a sinner then if I'm glorifying God? This is the sort of evil in the New Testament. You think, well, that's out of context. Of course it is, because it doesn't fit your pretext. But you can quote things out of context to support your pretext. Makes complete sense. 2 Corinthians 12:16. But be that as it may, I have not burdened you, yet because I was a crafty person, I took you in by deceit. I have not taken advantage of you through anyone, have sent to you, have I? Well, look, has he? Let's take a look at Philemon. Philemon. Come on. How do I get there? This is one they'll never read because of what it says. He's sending this guy to them. I am appealing to you concerning my child, whose spiritual father I have become during my imprisonment. That is Onesimus, who was formerly useless to you, but now useful to you and me. I have sent him back to you. Everybody just said, have I sent anyone to take advantage of you? I wanted to keep him so that he could serve me in your place during my imprisonment for the sake of the gospel. However, without your consent, I did not want to do anything so that your good deed would not come out of compulsion, but from your own willingness. He's gaslighting you. For perhaps it was for this reason that he was separated from you for a little while, so that you would come back eternally. No longer as a slave, but more than a slave, as your brother. He's especially so to me, even more so to you now. See how he's like planting these ideas, like he is so good and great to you. Keep him, take him in, both humanly speaking and in the Lord. Therefore, if you regard me as a partner, accept him as you would me. Now, if he has defrauded you, why would this even be an issue that Paul would say this? Remember what he said? Have I defrauded you? This is all gaslighting, because this is what Paul was doing. If anything or owes you anything, charge what he owes to me. I, Paul, have written this with my own hand. I will repay it. How is he going to repay it? He's in prison. It's like such gaslighting. I could also mention that you owe me your very self. See, I mean, this is the very definition of gaslighting. Like, I'm sending this guy. I know some of you think he's like a thief, but just take him in. I'll pay you back. Besides, you owe me everything. You owe me your very self. Like, this is like mafia-esque stuff. Yeah, Paul, the super apostle, that he's more like a mafia guy. I mean, this is so corrupt and evil. And of course, we have the testament of the 12 patriarchs. I mean, we got to trust those over Torah. And I'm not going to go over any of those because, in my mind, like much of the New Testament, it's not worth going over. Quotes from Matthew, quotes from John, and we have a quote from Exodus. Because Moses took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and they saw the Elohim of Israel was there. Oh, they did? But again, you take one verse and you go, oh, look. And I'm intentionally covering my right eye because this is what Christianity does. You're evil-eyed because you cover it. But look at what Deuteronomy 4 says. That, yes, they saw the Elohim of Israel, but did they see him with form? In Deuteronomy 4, it says Be very careful then, because you saw no form at the time. The Yehovah spoke to you at Horeb, and this is at Horeb in Exodus 24. They saw no form. So yes, they saw the Elohim of Israel, but they did not see any form. You take one passage out of context with your pretext, and you become an idolater. Let's keep reading this. I say to you, you will not corrupt yourselves by making any image in any form of any kind of figure. This includes the likeness of human male or female. Any image. Colossians 1:15. He is the image of the invisible God. That means he's not God, he's an image. He's an idol. It tells you literally in his own words. Romans 8:3. Oh, come on. I used the quote. 8:3. For God achieved what the law could not to do, because it was weakened through the flesh, by sending his own son. Remember, the son is Israel. So this is already like, whoosh, went over your head because you don't think the son is Israel. In the likeness of sinful flesh. So he was sent in the likeness of sinful flesh as the image of God, violating Deuteronomy 4, making an image in the likeness of sinful flesh. But check this out, because I told you Paul gaslights you. He does. He's literally mocking you. Is this in here somewhere? Which verse is that? Yeah, here we go. Verse 22. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools. Remember what he says. Like this is such gaslighting, cursing. I became a fool for Christ. And this is what every Christian says. I'm a fool for Christ. And I said it myself. I'm a fool for Christ. Yes, you became a fool. Is what he's telling you. And exchanged the glory of the immortal or incorruptible God for an image, remember Colossians 1:15, resembling mortal human beings, for birds or four-footed animals. He's literally telling you, if you worship him, you are a fool. You are not wise. And he makes this presupposition that they saw them. Oh, I did talk about this yesterday, the Barashit crap. This is not what Genesis 1 says, and this is not how language works. Bar is not son in Hebrew. And number two, Hebrew as a language can no longer be broken down into words like this. This goes back to what Hebrew was before it became a written language, pictographic. A pictographic language has thousands of characters, thousands, to represent different ideas and different things. Hebrew as a written language has 22 characters. 22. And yet they still try to use these ideas to prove their presupposition. This was made in Mars, not in a factory. Of course, then we get to their typology in Genesis 22. I've talked about how I doubt that this was originally in the Bible, Jeremiah 7:30, right? Yehovah says, I have rejected them because of the people of Judah. I've done what I consider evil. They have set up their disgusting idols in the temple, which I claimed for my own, and have defiled it. They have built the places of worship in a place called Topheth, in the valley of Ben Hinnom, which is Gehenna, so that they can sacrifice their sons and daughters by fire. But yet, it's okay for him to sacrifice his own son again? Again, we get to these typologies you ignore. Then, that is something I never commanded to do. Indeed, it never entered my mind to command such a thing. If it never entered his mind, he never commanded it. How could we believe that he commanded Abraham to do this act? Deuteronomy 12:31, you must not worship Yahweh your Elohim the way they do. And this is so important. the way they do. You must not copy them. What do they do? For everything that is abhorrent, everything he hates, they have done when worshiping their gods. They even burn up their sons and daughters before their gods. You really believe Genesis 22 is a command from the same Elohim, Yahweh, that commanded you, don't copy the nations, don't put your sons and daughters in the fire for me? I'm sorry, I don't. I don't believe Genesis 22 is a command that Yahweh actually spoke to Abram. I don't believe it. Book of Jasher, I don't care about. First John, I don't care about. All right, so Deuteronomy 32. And Yeshurun what the heck? Yeshurun waxed fat and kicked. You were grown fat. You were grown thick. You were covered with fatness. You forsook the Elohim which made you and made lightly the rock of salvation. Like, they're absolutely absurd connection here. Like, earlier on in Deuteronomy 32, what does it say? For I will proclaim the name of Yehovah. The name of Yehovah. I just read this. The name of Yehovah is the rock. As for the rock, his work is perfect. His ways are just. He is reliable. Who is never unjust. He is fair and upright. This is why he would not kill an innocent man for you. Sorry, he wouldn't. Well, you say he was the son of God. Well, no, Israel's the son of God. We've been over that. And then we go to the parable of the sower, because, teaching that Yahweh is just and does not take the murder of an innocent man to justify the wicked, like Exodus 23:7 says. Keep your distance from a false charge and do not kill the innocent and the righteous, for I will not justify the wicked. But you believe, Paul, that through the murder of an innocent man, the wicked can be justified. And I believe I talked about this in my study yesterday, but it might have been earlier than that. The parable of the sower. The parable of the sower talks about how it is the soil that determines if a plant grows or not. But Psalm 1 and Jeremiah 17:7 and 8 say it's not the soil, it's what you trust in and whether or not you meditate on Torah and distance yourself from the wicked. The soil doesn't matter. What are you being watered with? This is a verse I haven't talked about in a while. Jeremiah 2, and over here, we'll do John 19:31. So we'll read this first. Verse 13. Do so because my people have committed a double wrong. They have rejected me, the fountain of life-giving water, and they have dug cisterns for themselves, cracked cisterns which cannot even hold water. There's so much depth to that, but you don't see it because you spend so much time in these other useless writings. John 19:34. One of the soldiers pierced his side and a spear, and blood and water came out. He is the broken cistern. You put your faith in a man who the water poured out of. The living water came out of him. This is something he talks about, I believe in John 4. Out of your belly will flow life-giving water. Yeah, John 7, sorry. He that believeth on me, as the scripture hath said, and this is one of those things where you just go, oh, I can't see that part. Out of his belly shall flow living waters. So some of these translations, they actually do something really cool. When there's actually a quote that's in the Torah or the prophets, they'll tell you, and there are none. John 7:38, even though he says, as the scripture says, isn't anywhere. It's nowhere. This is a non-existent passage. None of the scripture says out of his heart will flow living waters. And if you look at other translations here, he that believeth on me, out of his belly shall flow waters of living water. Like, this is totally non-existent, but you just believe it. It because it's in the Gospel of John. It's canonized. It's officially from God. No, but look at this, Numbers 5. The unfaithful wife. What happens to the unfaithful wife when she drinks the bitter water and she's been unfaithful? Out of her belly flows living water. Is that just a coincidence that he's telling you when you believe in him, you become like the unfaithful wife to Jehovah, and out of your belly will flow the living water because of your unfaithfulness? Oh, then we go into David the Messiah. This is something that I'm beginning to see problems with. I think I'm going to skip this for now. I want to first discuss why I don't think David was a valid king, and that's important. Okay, Isaiah 53 is a good one, the suffering servant. So Isaiah 53. Let's go to Isaiah 53 over here and Ezekiel 4 over here. Who hath believed our report? To whom has the arm of Jehovah been revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as the root out of the ground. He has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Isn't this interesting? This is one of those things, again, like, oh, I'd go like this. You're not supposed to desire him. Even in the New Testament, it tells you this. This is like, oh, so repeatedly now I see this. Like, I have not come in my own name. This is in the Gospel of John again, by the way. I have come in my Father's name, and you've not received me. But if someone... Oh, that's the wrong verse. Let's see. What verse was that? 41, sorry. So, check this out. John 5:41. I do not accept glory from human beings. Your approval means nothing to me. I do not receive glory. And some of them actually say even more. I do not receive honor. I do not receive praise. Yeah, I don't care about human praise. Over and over again, he's telling you this. But again, you're just like, I don't want to look at that verse. I want to praise this guy that says, don't praise me. So let's go back to Isaiah 53. He despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Look at this. Borne our griefs, carried our sorrows. And we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we were healed. We like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and Jehovah has laid the iniquity on all of him. Laid it on him. This is important. Ezekiel 4. Now as for you, son of man, get yourself a brick, set it before you, and ascribe it a city on it, Jerusalem. Then set a siege against it, build a siege wall against it, and raise up a ramp against it, set up camps against it, and place battering rams against it all around. Now as for yourself, an iron plate, and set up an iron wall between you and the city, and establish your face toward it, so that it is under siege, and besiege it. This is a sign to the house of Israel. Now as for you, lie down on your left side, lay the iniquity of the house of Israel on it. This is so important, but you don't read them together. You're just reading proof text for your pretext. Remember what it said. He laid on him the iniquity of us all. And what does Ezekiel 4 say? I will lay the iniquity of the house of Israel on you. I mean, do you think this is just a coincidence? That it's not really about Ezekiel? And I don't know if we've passed it yet, but beforehand, I want to get to that. So one of the things Christians believe is this ridiculous idea of dual fulfillment, that it can be about Ezekiel and the idol. but you're totally proof texting to get there. And we'll get to that because this is so important to take things in the proper context. So now let's go to verse 7. And over here, we'll go to Acts 8 first, because we got to compare it to the text that makes them believe this. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment. Who will declare his generation? He was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. And I actually want to go to the Dead Sea Scrolls as well, because it's so important to understand that, that there wasn't this conspiracy among the Jews to hide the Messiah in Isaiah. They don't read Isaiah 53. No, you don't read Isaiah 54. You don't read Isaiah 52. You don't read Isaiah 45. You don't read Isaiah 61. You just read Isaiah 53 through the lens of the New Testament. Isaiah chapter 53. Look at that. God gave us 53. So look at verse 7 here. I'm going to read it here as well, because what is said in Acts 8 is such a corruption of the text. He was oppressed, and yet when he was afflicted, he did not open his mouth. And as a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and as a sheep that is before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. He was taken by oppression and judgment. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, same idea, cut off the land of the living, stricken for disobedience of my people. Okay, so let's now look at Acts 8. Now the passage of scripture which he was reading was this: as a sheep is led to the slaughter, as a lamb before its shearer is silent, so he does not open his mouth. In humiliation his judgment is taken away. I mean, it doesn't even say that. He was taken away by oppression and judgment. It doesn't say in humiliation he had no judgment. No. Who will recount his generation? For his life is removed from the earth. How many of you actually have done what I'm doing here? Like, open up two Bibles side by side and compare them. Is what the New Testament is saying in the source text? No. The Dead Sea Scrolls predate the 1st century. It's not there. There wasn't a conspiracy among the Jews. They're not time travelers. Like, they got into their DeLorean. They're like, I'm going to go back in time and fix this mistake. Like, come on, guys. Now let's go to what happens here. And Eunuch answered Philip and said, I ask you earnestly, of whom does this prophet say this, of himself or someone else? And we know his answer, but how would you answer it? Are you a student of Yahweh or a student of men? Jeremiah 11:19. But I was like a gentle lamb led to the slaughter, and I did not know what that they had devised thoughts against me, saying, let us make the tree without fruit a ruin. Let us cut him off from the land of the living, that his name be remembered no more. Who was this talking about, Philip? Jeremiah. That portion of Isaiah 53 was clearly about Jeremiah. Remember, Ezekiel and Jeremiah both lost their wives. And this is important. The whole idea of being fruitful and multiplying, of having seed, plural, is that you go forth and you have children. You have seed. You bear seed and you bear fruit. And look at what the language is here. Let us make the tree of its fruit a ruin. Talking about the fact that he's not going to have children. He's going to be cut off from the land of the living. So yes, the New Testament, man, he did fulfill that by not ever being married. But he chose that of himself. He even says, in Matthew 19:12, any man who can accept it should cut himself off, if you know what I mean. Because the same language Paul uses. I wish those preaching circumcision would just cut themselves off, castrate themselves, and make themselves cut off from the land of the living. Now let's continue Isaiah 53, because this is so important. Read the whole context. They made his grave with the wicked. You say, well, see, he died there. No, it's talking about what they did, not that it happened. It's the same with Psalm 22. You believe Psalm 22 is about him because, they pierced his hands, even though the text doesn't say that. Isaiah 36:6 does, that those who trust in Egypt will have their hands pierced. But Psalm 22 is about being surrounded by your enemies, and then your enemies do what? Your enemies turn and are defeated by Yahweh. Read the whole psalm. They made his grave with the wicked and a rich people in his death. Notice it didn't say rich man, it said rich people. It was plural before the first century. Although he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased Yahweh to bruise him. Notice, bruise him, not destroy him. He caused him to suffer. When you make his soul is not his body, an offering for sin. He will see his offspring, and he will prolong his days. See, Ezekiel and Jeremiah, though during their affliction they had no children, after that was complete, they did. They saw their offspring, and they had their days prolonged. Remember, Ezekiel's prophecy is about the coming Babylonian exile, that he will represent what is about to happen to Judah and to Israel. Jeremiah was a prophet in Jerusalem that told them Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. And then Jerusalem was destroyed, but Jeremiah was spared, and he had his days prolonged, and he saw his offspring. So, Tree of Eternal Life asked a question about Isaiah 62. We can look at that real quick, then I want to get back into one more topic in his mega post. For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent, and for Jerusalem's sake, I will not keep quiet until her righteousness goes forth like brightness and her salvation like a torch that is burning. The nations will see her righteousness and all the kings her glory. So right here we see already, this is a qualification. Did the Gentiles see righteousness in the act of human sacrifice? Look at the history. This is why I say, know the history, know the roots. Look at the history of the Roman Church. And I strongly urge you, like, go to YouTube and type in sacred sodomy. And then scroll down. Where is it at? Yeah, so there are several videos on this. This isn't the one I'm talking about. It's from Lady Babylon. And she's done this deep dive into the history of early Christianity, how they would perform these sodomy acts, calling the devil in and saying, this is what it means to be born again. To have this sacred sodomy act without enjoying it means you're born again. So no, I don't believe that the Gentiles see righteousness in this. I don't. All your kings your glory, and you will be called by a new name, which the mouth of Yahweh will designate. You will also crown of glory in the hand of Yahweh, and a turban of royalty in the hand of your God. This is about Israel. It will no longer be said you are forsaken. And remember, this is specifically about the exile. This is all the context of the exile. The land was forsaken for 70 years. So let's go back to this, of course. Yeah, so ye that fear Yahweh praise him, all the seed of Jacob glorify him. So of course, they think the seed is one man, which, that makes total sense from an agrarian community. I'm going to take one seed, plant it, and say, I'm putting my faith and hope that this one cabbage feeds me for the whole year. I'm just planting one cabbage seed. This interpretation is nonsense. Let's see, where was that at? There's a lot of other things in here that, I could talk about. Like Zechariah 3 was also about the exile. It wasn't about the New Testament. Oh, here we go. So this is one of the favorite proof texts, Isaiah 7:14, right? And of course, we're again reading from the Aramaic translation. Let's see if it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Isaiah 65. So this is, I have spread out my hands all day long to rebellious people. This is poetic language, who walk in a way that is not good, following their own thoughts. A people who continually provoke me from my face, offering sacrifices in the gardens and burning incense on bricks, who sit among the graves and spend the night in secret places. Yeah. Who's doing that? Christians. Former Bethel leader speaks out on church's beliefs of grave stoking and gold dust. Yeah, that would be Christians. Who eat the swine's flesh, Christians, and the broth of offensive meat is in their pots. It's not what it's talking about, tree of life. He's not stretching out his arms all day long on the cross. That's a ridiculous interpretation. This is just poetic language of him spreading out his hands as a graceful God and not going like this and crushing you, like welcoming you back in, spreading out your hands. He's not talking about spreading out his arms. And I do think the portion of this is about the idol, can be interpreted that way. Verses down here, in verse 15 or 16. Oh, it's 66, sorry. 66. For behold, Yahweh will come in a fire, and his chariots, though like the whirlwind, to return his anger with wrath and rebuke his flames with fire. For Yahweh will execute judgment by fire and by his sword on all flesh, and those slain by Yahweh will be many. Those who sanctify and purify themselves, they go to the garden, following the one in the center. That's the idol. That's what it means. It then uses the word Echad, one. This is what he calls himself. I am one. I am Echad with the Father. He is the idol, Echad. Who eat the swine's flesh, detestable things, and mice will come to an end together. They are following the idol, and they will come to an end. So let's go to Isaiah 7:14. So 7:14 is in the middle of a prophecy to Ahaz. So it starts at verse 10. Yahweh spoke again to Ahaz, saying, ask a sign of Yahweh, your Elohim. Ask it either in the depth or in the height above. But Ahaz said, I won't ask. I won't tempt Yahweh. And he said, listen now, house of David, is it not enough for you to try the patience of men, that you will try the patience of my Elohim also? Therefore, Yahweh himself will give you a sign. And behold, the virgin, and this is something he points to in his video. He goes to the Dead Sea Scrolls and says, look, it's virgin. That's how a Christian translated it. That's not what the Hebrew word means. I mean, let's go to the interlinear here so we can show you. Isaiah 7:14. And look at the footnote here. Or maiden. Literally, or maiden. So let's look at the word. Alma. Alma is translated as maid twice and damsel once. And they do translate it as a virgin 4 times. So Genesis 24, verse 43. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and it may be that the maiden, who would have also been a virgin, because this is the woman that he was about to marry, who comes out to draw water, and to whom I say, please let me drink a little water. Exodus 2:8. And the Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the girl, the young woman, went and called the child's mother. Psalm 68:25. And the singers went on, the musicians after them, in the midst of the maidens, beating tambourines. See, we see over and over again this thing, right? So let's keep reading though, because this is important. Let's like fully discuss this before we dig back into what he says. He will eat curds and honey in order that he will know to refuse the evil and choose the good. So this is part of this. Remember, the verses came later. This is all one text. He will eat the curds and honey in order that he will know to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the boy will know to refuse evil and choose the good, the land whose two kings you dread will be forsaken. And Yahweh will bring on you and your people and on your father's house days which have never come since the day that Ephraim was separated from Judah, the king of Assyria. Oh God, you believe that? Um, how much time I have? I only have 8 minutes left. So let's first do this. I don't want to get distracted by that. Then Yahweh said to me, take for yourself a large tablet and write on it in ordinary letters concerning Mahaner Shalal Hashbez. And I will take to myself a faithful witness for testimony, Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jerebekiah. Then I drew near to the prophetess, the maiden, the virgin woman. She conceived and bore a son. Then Yahweh said to me, call his name Maharar Shalal Hashbaz. For before the boy knows how to cry out, my father and mothers. Remember that what it said in Isaiah 7. Before the boy is grown to know the good from the evil. The wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. And these are the two kings, Damascus and Assyria. And Yahweh spoke to me further, saying, inasmuch as these people have rejected the gently flowing water Shiloh, and rejoiced in Rezin, the son of Remaliah, now therefore, behold, the Lord is about to bring on them the mighty and abundant waters of the river, and the king of Assyria in all his glory, and it will rise up over all the channels and go over all its banks. Then it will sweep on into Judah, it will overflow and pass through. It will reach even to the neck, and then spread its wings, fill the breadth. O Emmanuel. Context. It's so important. And, this is why he goes on to say, this idea of, if the Greek was wrong, surely the Dead Sea Scroll copies would expose this issue. Well, they do. The problem is you're reading a translation, not Hebrew. However, we see the same verbiage. Yes, because you're reading a translation. It's also worth mentioning that Messiah deniers believe that this prophecy was only limited to the 65 years given in Isaiah 7, because we see that in Isaiah 8. Not recognizing the dual fulfillment is within Yahweh's skill set. Is it? I'm sure, but you still have to take the passage in its context. You can't cherry pick what you want here and there and say, look, that's fulfilled, that's fulfilled, that's fulfilled. This is ridiculous. It's about specifically the kings that were harassing Ahaz, that they would be destroyed before this child knew the good from the evil. But you want to cherry pick one passage out of context and say, look, it's fulfilled again. But you can't do that. That's not how any of the text works. All right, so before I go, I want to bring up this idea that Tree of Life says that, Yeshua is the only man without sin. 2 Kings 18:4. What does it say? 18:5, sorry. And he trusted in Jehovah. This is Hezekiah, the Elohim of Israel, so that after him there was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor among those who were before him. He clung to Jehovah. He did not turn away from following him, but kept his commandments, which Jehovah had commanded him. He was without sin. But now let's go to the New Testament, Matthew 19:12. For there are eunuchs who were born that way from their mother's womb, and there are eunuchs who were made eunuchs by men. And there are also eunuchs who made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. He who is able to accept this, let him accept it. He just commanded you to violate the Torah. Deuteronomy 23:1. He who is emasculated by crushing or mutilation shall not enter the assembly of Yahweh. So this is not for Yahweh. Let's go to another one. John 2. This is one that's in all four Gospels. Let's see, where does that start? The cleansing of the temple, which is in Matthew 21, Mark 11, and Luke 19. And so the Passover of the Jews was near. Jesus went up to Jerusalem. He found in the temple those who were selling oxen, sheep, and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. So we have this presupposition, right? Because it's in the text. It's true. They were in the temple. Okay. Why would you believe that? Look at what I've shown you from the New Testament, that they misquote texts, they make pretext up, and they completely invent texts. So now you're suddenly, this is true? And Jesus entered the temple and drove out all those who were buying and selling in the temple. I mean, if they were truly in the temple where the Ark of the Covenant is, yes, they were doing what was wrong. But I don't believe they were actually in the temple. They were probably in the courtyards, right? But, let's just assume that they were in the temple and, the high priest allowed them to be in the temple doing this. Do you really believe that? The light is what? Tree of life. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light. The Torah. The Torah is the light to the nations. This is the promise to the nations. Jeremiah 17:5. Oh man, I keep mistyping. Thus says Jehovah, cursed is the man who trusts in mankind and makes flesh his strength, and whose heart turns away from Jehovah. You've done exactly this, and you don't even see it. You've turned away from Jehovah because you made this man, Isaiah 2:22, Acts 2:22, John 8:40, Colossians 1:15, Romans 8:3, Revelation 3:2. He is a man who says, I have a God. And you've taken this man who says, do not praise me in John 5:41, and you praise him, make him your mediator, right? But he says, cursed is the man who trusts in mankind, makes flesh his strength. What is the strength of Yahweh? That is his right hand. His right hand is his strength. You make that his strength. Your heart has turned away from Jehovah. You see, this is the thing. This is supposed to only belong to one Elohim, Jehovah, not two. Let's see. I'm already at the same length as last time. Yeah, show a copy of Pagan Deities. Yes, he is. That's it. Goodbye. And let me end with this picture because I love this picture. This is man, according to Paul, saved by grace. And this is woman, saved by bearing children. And this statement is true. It's in the Bible. I hope all of you turn to Yahweh alone. This is so important. You have to realize, he is a jealous Elohim. He doesn't want you serving two Elohim. Oh my gosh. I can't type this morning. Exodus 20. Then Elohim spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other Elohim before me. You shall make yourself an idol or any likeness of what is in heaven or above on earth and beneath in the water. Romans 8:3, he is the likeness of a man. Colossians 1:15, he is the image of God. You are to serve Yahweh alone, not the likeness, not the image. You shall not worship them or serve them. I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, on the third and fourth generations of those who hate me. And this is what you see in early Christianity, even today. Early Christianity, all were persecuted. You know, this is one of these persecution complexes that we get in our deceitful heart. If you're persecuted, it's because you're telling the truth. It can be. It certainly can be. But is it always a true statement? Is it always the case that if you're persecuted and murdered, that you're telling the truth? That you are following the truth? Did you know that China murdered over 500,000 Buddhists? Mormons were murdered in Missouri before they came to Utah. I mean, this is a universal trait of humanity, that we persecute one another of those that do not believe like us. It's a universal trait. The Talmudic Jews were persecuted by Hitler in Germany. I know some of you doubt that, but I believe it's true. There are multiple people that testify of this happening, of them seeing where they buried mass graves of people. There are pictures of it. Now, is it 6 million people? I don't know. Does it matter if it was 1 million people or 6 million? Does 2 million or 6 million? He murdered millions of Jews. He also murdered millions of gypsies, of blacks, of people that were mentally handicapped. He persecuted people. Were the people persecuted following the truth? Persecution is not a sign of truth. If that's true, tree of life, what you say that he is Yahweh's right hand, then you've made a man who says he is a man in John 8:40. Remember, I am a man. That's what he says. You've made a man the strength and the right arm of Yahweh, which means that you are cursed. I'm telling you this because I want you to think about this. Paul is a false apostle. Absolutely. Paul's epistles were written about probably 60 AD to 80 AD. Every single gospel, including the earliest one of Mark, were written after Paul. All of them are influenced by Paul. Remember what I said, Matthew 19:12, right? This is one of the verses that woke me up. Like, this is so anti-Torah. This is completely anti-Torah. But what do I see in 1 Corinthians 7? Paul saying the same thing as this man. It is good for men to remain even as he is. He would wish that all men were like him. Even if you're married, live like you're not married. Cut yourself off from the land of the living. I mean, this is the same message. The same message. Or here's another example, in Matthew 19 and Romans 13. What do we see? Romans 13, starting at verse 8. Love your neighbor. No one anything except to love one another, for he who owes one another has fulfilled the law. Is that fulfilling law just loving one another? I mean, that's part of the law. Certainly. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet. And if there's any other commandment at all summed up like this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, I mean, is that really all of the commandments? Does that sum up all the commandments? Look at Matthew 19. Then he said to them, why are you asking me about what is good? There is only one who is good, but if you wish to enter life, keep the commandments. Then he said to him, which ones? And Jesus said, you shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and your mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Why do these tables match so closely? Because Matthew, Mark, and Luke were all written after Paul's epistles. They're all using the same message. It's not a different message. Now, there were different cults of early Christianity, absolutely. Like you can tell that Ignatius in 110 AD, who was completely anti-Torah, who quoted from Matthew and from Paul, he hated the Jews and he hated the Torah. And I strongly urge you, go read Ignatius. Go read it. You either will continue to believe in your roots, or you will wake up and serve Yahweh alone. Why did they cut off the first 4 commandments? And I think, Father is so good that I just read these first 4. Have no other Elohim before Yahweh. Make no image of Yahweh. Do not take his name in vain, and remember the Sabbath day. All gone. But it's also missing the 10th commandment in both tables. You shall not covet. And then it skips from the table of 10 to Leviticus 19:18. Leviticus 19:18 is a great commandment. But what's the context of that? You shall not take vengeance, and you shall not keep your anger against the sons of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. It's about taking vengeance. Like, if someone has wronged you, you are to seek justice, not vengeance. That is how you love your neighbor. And you go to the prior verse, verse 17. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You may surely reprove him, so you do not bear your sin. And this is why I speak so strongly against the human sacrifice and theophagy of the New Testament. I don't want the innocent blood on my hands. I don't want you to be in sin because of me. He says lots of things, Tree of Life, that are just blatantly false. I mean, you said he doesn't sin, but how, John 6:56 is a sin. It is a sin. And it doesn't matter if you spiritualize this. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me and I in him. Leviticus 7:27, whoever eats my blood, that person shall be cut off from his people. This is completely anti-Torah. You say, well, it's an allegory. It doesn't matter. I mean, this is coming from the same guy you believe can alter Torah. Matthew 5:21. You have heard it said from the ancients who told you, you shall not murder. That's Torah. The Torah says you shall not murder. Whoever murders shall be guilty before the court. But I say to you, this is him adding to the Torah, violating Deuteronomy 4:2, Deuteronomy 13, Deuteronomy 18:20-22. That everyone who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court. Whoever says to his brother, Rakah, shall be guilty before the Sanhedrin. Whoever says, you fool, shall be guilty enough to go into hell. Torah does not say this. Him saying this as a commandment violates Torah. But he even can't keep his own commandment because these books were not written by one person. Look at Matthew 23. Verse 17, you fools and blind men. He just commanded, if any of you call a man a fool, you're guilty enough for the fires of Gehenna. But I can call a man a fool. Okay. I mean, do you think it's a coincidence? In the beginning of Matthew 23, Father put this in for you to be woken up. Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and his disciples. The scribes and the Pharisees have seated themselves in the chair of Moses. Therefore, all that they tell you to do and keep. How many of you that you follow this man as the Son of God, as your Messiah? You say we should keep his word. He's telling us how to keep the Torah. Do you go to a Jewish synagogue on the Sabbath to hear them read Torah. Because this is a commandment in the New Testament from Jesus. This is the words in red. Therefore, all that they tell you to do and keep, but do not do according to their deeds, which, I mean, it includes him. Because he just said, don't call a man a fool, but I'm going to call a man a fool. For they say things and do not do them. The seed is always plural, Sarah. Always. Zerah is always plural. And Jehovah said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you more than any of the cattle, and more than any of the beasts of the field. On your belly you will go, and the dust you will eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between her children. That's what his seed means. Your children, the serpent, your children. This is, again, you're like going like this. I don't see that part because, Satan doesn't have children. He's a spirit in your belief. He doesn't have children. And her children, plural. Well, guys, I got to get going. Love you all. Shalom. This video has been super long. Hope you all are edified in this and that you stop serving the man who told you you can be saved by doing nothing but accepting the bribe of an innocent man being murdered. Hallelujah, that we don't have that blood on our hands. And we can raise our hands and praise Father without the blood. Amen.